Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the online launch for the latest issue, Antidote to Agony, focus on the poetry of Greece and Cyprus. This issue features 30 selections of poems translated into English by contemporary poets, expanding the linguistic boundary, reflecting on themes such as migrant crossings in the Mediterranean, female friendship, the transcription of orality, imagined plagues, the encounters of bodies, the AIDS pandemic, and artistic ruin. There are two introductory essays in the issue by Brian Sneeden and Kostia Solakis, and there are also selections from French, classical Tamil, and Peruvian Spanish. We have with us today some contributors to the issue, two poets and two translators. I'll read their biographies and then we'll hear some readings from the poets accompanied by the translations, and then we'll open into a conversation. I'm Jessica Sequeira, the guest editor for the issue, and it's been a real pleasure to work on this. So here are the biographies. We have with us Dimitra Kotoula, the author of 4 poetry collections. Her poems, essays, and translations, mainly of the contemporary female poets Louise Gluck, Jory Graham, and Sharon Olds, are featured widely in renowned European and US literary journals. She was the recipient of the prestigious Greek prize, the Chartis Award. Selected poems of hers have been published in the US, translated by Maria Nazos, present today, with an introduction by A.S. Stallings. The book was reviewed by the TLS and listed for the Runciman Prize, as well as recommendations from the Poetry Society of America. Her translator is here also, Maria Nazos, who was raised in Athens, Greece. She is the translator of The Slow Horizon That Breathes. Her biography says, after a tumultuous career as a whale watch boat attendant, table dancer, and the worst waitress on Cape Cod, she has settled into a quieter life in Lincoln, Nebraska. Maria's newest collection of poems, Pulse, is forthcoming from Omni Dawn Publishing in spring 2026. Our other poet with us today is Phoebe Giannisi, who is the author of 9 collections of poetry, including Chimera and Thetis and Adon. She is the professor of architecture at the University of Thessaly and the co-editor of the literary journal FRMK. Her translator is Brian Sneeden, the author of 2 collections of poetry, including most recently Year of the Labyrinth, and translator of 4 collections from the modern Greek, including Phoebe Giannisi's recent Goatsong. Brian is a senior lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan University. So we've got a really great group with us today, and since we've only got an hour, we'll go straight to the readings, starting with Dimitra Kotoula.
Hey, thanks so much, Jessica. It's so nice to see you all, to be here among good friends. Thank you. I guess you can all hear me well. So I'll begin with a poem. Of course, I'll read in Greek, and Maria is going to read the translation. So it is one of a series of poems that they've got a similar issue. They have to do with the Greek realities, let's say. Now, Μήνορα ποέτικα 10. Άστρα, αμέτρητα άστρα. Η λεπίδα του καλοκαιριού κοκκινίζει το λευκό μάρμαρο. Ένα κομμάτι ουρανός γυρίζει αμήχανα ανάμεσά μας, σαν ξεχασμένο νόημα. Βραδιάζει. Σύννεφα παρελάβουν με μακριές τρομπέτες κατά πάνω μας. Αποσπάς το νόημα από την πραγματικότητα και η πραγματικότητα εκρήγνεται. Έπειτα, ένας τεχνίτης άπλωσε τα χρώματα στον καμβά και φάνηκαν όλα. Ο κορυδαλός που πέταξε πάνω από τις μέρες μας και άστρα, αμέτρητα άστρα.
Thank you. Tough act to follow. And so I'm kind of emotional in a good way. I just to hear things read aloud in Greek, it's just really moving for me. So thank you so much for everyone being here. Can everyone hear me okay? I've never been accused of being quiet. Perfect. Minora Poetica 10. Stars, countless stars. The blade of summer blushes. The pale marble, a shattered piece of sky, twists uneasily between us, like a forgotten meaning. Night falls, clouds march past with long trumpets, closing in on us. You rip meaning from reality, and reality erupts. Afterwards, a painter smears color across a canvas, and all is revealed. The skylark hovers above our days, and stars, countless stars. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. It is so great to hear, my poetry translated in such a wonderful way, I have to say. So, my next poem, it is called «Προς τη Δύση». Μην ανασένεις. Δεν υπάρχει χώρος αρκετός. Είμαστε πολλοί σε αυτή τη βάρκα. Το νερό είναι σκληρό. Ο αέρας κόβεται φέτες. Σγουρές δίνες μελανών κυμάτων πλέουν δυτικά, ύστερα βόρεια. Πορφυρές λεπίδες βραδινού φωτός χαράζουν τον παγωμένο ορίζοντα. Μην ανασένεις. Η ζωή αραιώνει στα βαθιά πολύ. Και όταν φτάσουμε εκεί, θα πρέπει να μάθουμε αντί για τα γνωστά, ονόματα ξένα. Ο πόθος μας ήταν αγνός, η λαχτάρα μεγάλη, ο σκοπός έμοιαζε ένδοξος. Δεν φαντάζεσαι τι ακολούθησε. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, Maria, your turn.
To the west. Don't breathe. There's no room for it. There are too many of us in this boat. The waters are rough. The air could be diced into slices. Curled swirls of black ink waves drift west, then north. Magenta blades of nighttime light carve skate marks across icy horizons. Do not breathe. Life shreds into wisps, then dissolves into depths. And when we arrive, we'll have to learn new names in place of the old. Our yearnings were pure. The desire ran deep. The intent benevolent. You can't imagine what happens next.
Okay. Have we got time for another one? I don't know, Jessica.
I think so.
We have time for another one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, ποιητική αδεία 2. Αν ανοίξεις το ψυγείο, θα σε χτυπήσουν κατά πρόσωπο ασφόδελοι και πεταλούδες. Μέσα στο σώμα εργάζονται μηχανές ολοένα και μικρότερες. Μέσα στο μυαλό ριζώνουν σκέψεις ολοένα αιχμηρότερες. Άσπρα κύματα υψώνονται προς τη θάλασσα. Ο αφρός της ομίχλης γυαλίζει έξω από το παράθυρο. Αν ανοίξεις το ψυγείο, θα σε χτυπήσουν κατά πρόσωπο ασφόδελοι και πεταλούδες. Κατά χείμωνο, χωρίς πάθος, χωρίς να σκέφτομαι τίποτε. Ντρέπομαι για το απονενοημένο αυτό διαβημά μου, τον υπερβάλλοντα ζήλο, τη ρακένδυτη προσευχή μου. Υπάρχει μια ρογμή στο ταβάνι. Θα μπορούσα να συνεχίσω αυτό το ποίημα για λίγο ακόμα, αλλά με εμποδίζει το μαύρο σε αυτήν την πληγή. Thank you. Maria, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Poetic license 2. If you open the fridge, you'll get struck in the face with asphodels and butterflies. Inside the body, machines work away, smaller and smaller still. Inside the mind, thoughts take root, sharper and sharper still. Pale waves rise toward the sea. Foamed mist glistens beyond the window. If you open the fridge, you'll get hit in the face with asphodels and butterflies. Midwinter, not a hint of passion, not thinking of a thing. I'm ashamed of this untamed desperation, my undying hunger, my threadbare prayer. There's a crack in the ceiling. I could continue this poem a little longer, but that dark wound in all its black, it still holds me back. Thank you.
Ηθάκι 1. Στο μακρύ τραπέζι μπροστά, συνδετημόνες, άγνωστοι, κρασί, κεφάλι τυλιγμένο. Με δάκρυα ακούω το τραγούδι. Ακούω να φεύγεις, να γίνεσαι ξένος. Εμπρός στην τηλεόραση όνειρο. Η γλώσσα σου δεν μου ανήκει. Ιστορώντας, το στόμα ανοίγοντας, ο ξένος θέλει να επιστραφεί. Σεντούκια δώρα φορτωμένος, νύχτα όπως τώρα με καλυμμένα τα μάτια. Και οι σύντροφοι θα λάμνουν, και η βάρκα ύπνος, πριν γίνει πέτρα, προσωρινά θα δέσει στην παραλία, με την πηγή των μελισσών τους πίθους, τα κοριτσίστικα παιχνίδια. Και η σπηλιά, με τις δύο πόρτες, κλέος και λύθη, βουβό θα τον δεχθεί, σκεπασμένος τροσίδια, ανάμεσα στη σιωπή και τη σιωπή.
Ithaca 1. In front of the long table, foreign dinner guests, wine, your head shrouded, listening with tears to the song. I hear you leaving, becoming a stranger, a dream I had in front of the TV. Your language does not belong to me, telling the story, opening your mouth. The stranger wants to be sent back with chests full of gifts on a night like this one, blindfolded, with a crew pulling at the oars, and the boat asleep before turning to stone will tie off in beach sand beside the spring, bee jars, the games of little girls, and the grotto with its 2 doors, fame and forgetting, will accept him without a word, dressed in sheets between silence and silence.
Τον δι τυθνητή μεν έρωτα καλούσι πότινον αθάνατη δε πτέρωτα δια πτερό φύτορ ανά γιν. Γενέθλια.
Birthday.
Φαγουρίζουνε τα φτερά όταν βγαίνουν.
Do the wings itch as they sprout?
Όταν από την έξοδο της κοιλιάς έβγαλες πρώτα το κεφάλι και σπρώχνοντας από τον πόνο πετάχτηκες έξω στο φως για να φωνάξεις, ήταν τα μάτια σου ανοιχτά?
When from the belly's opening you first raised your head and pushing from the pain sprang into the light to cry out, were your eyes open?
Άκουσες τα λόγια αυτών που σε κρατούσαν βοηθώντας όλο το σώμα συστραμμένο, μαζεμένο, τα πόδια λυγισμένα και η μέρα ζεστή?
Did you listen to their words as they held gently your contorted body, gathered, legs tucked, and the day warm?
Μία γυναίκα γεννούσε του αυτοκινήτου της το πάτωμα. Κάθε μεγάλωμα άραγε, πονάει σαν το πρώτο. Δεν μεγαλώνει κανείς με τον ίδιο ρυθμό, αδιόρατα.
A woman giving birth on the floor of her car. Is each growth painful as the first? Doesn't one grow at the same pulse, imperceptibly?
Ή μήπως μετά από περιόδους τάσης, έφνηση, κίνηση σε κατακτά και αυξάνεσαι και ανυπόφορα αλλάζεις? Πετάς από πάνω σου σαν το λουλούδι τα πέταλα μέσα στη δρόσο που ρουφάς κάτι παλιό και ξανά?
Or is it after periods of stasis, when motion seizes you suddenly, and you grow and are unbearably changed? Do you cast off the old like the flower its petals in the dew that you suck again and again?
Κατοικημένος από τις νύχτας τις αγωνίες, ανοίγεις τα πρωινά σου μάτια ανάποδα να κοιτάξεις τον κόσμο?
Inhabited by night's afflictions, do you open your morning eyes slantwise to survey the world?
Έχεις μαζέψει τα άστρα, τα κρατάς στα χέρια, τα σκορπάς στο χώμα την άμμο. Έχεις ψηλώσει πια το δέντρο εσύ. Μας χωράς στη μικρή σου σκιά. Πιο ελαφρύς τώρα, πιο ελαφρύς.
You've gathered the stars. You hold them in your hands. You scatter them onto the earth and the sand. Taller than ever. You, the tree. We fit inside your tiny shadow. Lighter now. Lighter.
Transhumans 1. Εν αρχή ειν η νομή. Κομμάτια γης παρμένα, εκτεταμένα, απ' τη βροχή και τον καιρό ποτισμένα, φαγωμένα, από τα βήματα ζώων ανθρώπων γεγραμμένα. Αντιχούσε. Κοιλάδες ρέματα και απέναντι κορφές έφερναν πίσω τις φωνές.
In the beginning was the grazing, the pasture, sections of earth gathered, extended, suffused from rain and the elements, eaten by footsteps, the cursive of animals and humans echoing, the valleys, streams, and summits beyond, brought back voices.
Εν αρχή είναι η νομή. Για να μετακομίσω έπρεπε να μαζέψω, έπρεπε να διαλέξω τα πράγματα. Τα πράγματα, τα ζώα, τα πράγματα, τα πράγματα.
In the beginning was the field, To move out, I had to gather. I had to cull the things, the things, the animals, the things, the things. What do you carry on you when you leave?
Τι κουβαλάς μαζί όταν φεύγεις?
My dark, my own piece of dark.
Τι κουβαλάς μαζί όταν φεύγεις?
The markings on the body.
Στο σώμα, τα σημάδια.
What do you carry when you leave? My spell.
Το ξόρκιμο. Λύσμο, νήμε, νεσπρά, ψης, λύσμο, νήμε, νεσλε, ψης, κομμάτια της παλιάς ζωής, για να την έχεις φυλαχτό, σαν ο κόκκινο σταυρό.
To move on, I had to cull the things, the fragments my children left behind, before leaving me to begin their own lives.
Κιάτρα κράπα, όμλουνου κρυάπα.
A stone breaks, a man does not break. Still, pressed deep under skin, traveling in the flesh, choosing their own paths, one ascends to the heart, another pierces your abdomen.
Όμως, τα θράψματα είναι γυαλί. Χώνεται κάτω από το δέρμα βαθιά και μες στη σάρκα ταξιδεύει, τους δικούς του δρόμους διαλέγει. Ένα τους ανεβαίνει στην καρδιά. Άλλο θα σου τρυπήσει την κοιλιά. Τι ρίχνει ο Θεός και δεν το καταπίνει η γης?
What does God cast down that the earth does not swallow? Wound through and through, I spit it from my mouth like a bitter seed, but not a single teardrop touched my cheek. Why I had for years now clenched my teeth.
Τραύμα διαμπερές. Το φτύσα από το στόμα σαν πικρό κουκούτσι. Αλλά κανένα δάκρυ δεν μου στόλισε το μάτι, γιατί είχα χρόνια τώρα σφίξει γερά τα δόντια.
You cannot eat a stone, mother says, instead of you cannot escape your fate.
Το πετρωμένο φαγήν αδύνατον, λέει η μάνα, αντί για το πεπρωμένο φυγήν αδύνατον.
In order to leave, I had to cull the things. That agony lasted months, an entire winter, heavy and dark, stripping layer by layer the vessels of memory. But what hurt most was what had for so long slipped between my fingers like air, what had been forgotten, the missing, what had not happened.
Για να φύγω, έπρεπε να διαλέξω τα πράγματα. Μήνες κράτησε το μαρτύριο. Ολόκληρος χειμώνας. Βαρύς, σκοτεινός, ξεφύλιζε τα δοχεία των αναμνήσεων. Όμως, πιο πολύ, πόναγε αυτό που είχε τόσα χρόνια ανάμεσα στα δάχτυλα γλιστρήσει σαν αέρας. Ό,τι εξεχάστη. Τα κενά. Ό,τι δεν έγινε.
Parmenides says, but see with your mind those who are missing, as if they were present.
Λεύσε δόμος, απεόντανο, παρεόντα, βεβαίως. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe, and thank you, Dimitra, for those beautiful, beautiful poems. And thank you to the translators also for rendering them into English in very also beautiful and unique ways. We'll move into the conversation now. The idea is to talk for half an hour or so, maybe a little bit less, and then open it to the audience questions. If anybody has questions, they can start putting them into the chat also. So the first question I wanted to ask to both pairs is about the process of working together. because this is an amazing opportunity to work with a living writer, as opposed to somebody who's, been published decades ago or even centuries ago. In the Greek tradition, as we all know, there are centuries of writers. What was it like working with somebody who could possibly give feedback to your translations? And for the poets, what was it like working with a translator who could ask you questions? I'd like to hear about the relationship between the pairs.
So, Jessica, I think you froze for a little bit, but that's okay. I'm happy to jump in. And Dimitra, you can back me on this. We have been working together, if you can believe this, 13 going on 14 years. This is wild. I was but a lowly grad student when I met her, and now here we are. And so hence the very, very emotional reactions that we have after hearing one another read. What I have to say that I really enjoyed what we did with our process is that we literally, and again, Dimitra can attest to this, we would email documents back, so much back and forth, right? At least at the beginning. And there was just a lot of red ink and a lot of sort of getting to know and understand one another's style, when to deviate, when not to, when to create or explain to the reader when we should have idioms that are American or not. And that went on for quite a while. But what I will say is, afterwards, as we got more used to one another, the notes became shorter and shorter. And this time around, I would say they're like minimal. Dimitra, what do you think?
Yes, I mean that was the case actually, and I I felt very privileged to work with a translator that I can sort of exchange views and opinions with him, her. I mean, Maria has been wonderful, and it is true that because we were working for so many years, we've sort of learned each other's, I mean, even thoughts, which is amazing. And this privilege to have a translator with whom I can communicate and exchange views and see the draft and suggest things or whatever, actually made possible to not just translate, but to actually go beyond a plain translation and try to, in a way, also give, translate, or try to transmit, let's say, the silence of the poem. I mean, you read the poem and then you are alone with the poem, and there is a sort of silence in your mind, in your existence. You're feeling from this poem, from the language, from the contact with the language. Now, this cannot be literally translated into another language. So the translator has to find a way to sort of make possible to the reader the participation to this feeling, I mean, to share this feeling in another language. That was a privilege, I have to say. And Maria was, really amazing in doing that, I have to admit. But of course, it took years and years. It was hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about Brian and Phoebe. I mean,
Yeah. What's it been like for you?
I mean, I have to say, it sounded like a very similar story. Although I don't think we've been working together for 13 years, Phoebe. I think it's just about 11 for us now. But I was similarly to Maria. I was a lowly graduate student when we met, and translated our first book together, Homerica, back in 2016 now, over a summer. And I will say one of the early kind of aids I had in the translation process, because Phoebe was the first poet I had ever translated, was the Kedros version of the book Homerica came with a CD which had Phoebe reading the poems. I literally had her, back when CDs were a thing, right? I literally had her voice in my head, in my ears, as I was translating, and that was extremely useful as an introduction, because as a translator, what you're doing is you're inhabiting another poet's voice. You're stepping into their voice, and your writing becomes their writing. So I enjoyed so much, Dimitra, hearing your experience about the kind of back and forth and silence and presence in the poem. And I will say Phoebe might disagree, but I will say as well, like our back and forth, we've similarly entered a rhythm where I feel like we preempt each other. We understand kind of the meaning. But we do a form of translation in our communication as well, where we get a sense of what the others is reaching towards in the work. And I think similarly, our correspondence has become less. Phoebe, what would you say? I think you might
Yes,
still be
yes,
muted.
okay. I think our conversation becomes less because there is a little bit that we haven't done things, no? A small, very small period. I think our friendship becomes stronger through the translation process, and our understanding of each other's view on the translation becomes more and more apparent. And now I start thinking I'm very happy to work with Brian, and I'm very happy to work with him because I feel, as you see, we are in a way performing the poetry together. I think we found a way to be two instead of being one, and to have this kind of dialogic acceptance, the one of the voice of the other inside her or his own voice. Because I understand that Brian's work and everyone's, I mean, who translates the poets of another, is like adding her or his own voice to the voice of the poet. And because I am trying to have something like a polyphonic poetry, I'm really debtful to Brian and for what he adds to my poetry. I mean, the new word of the new version of the poem, it's a new voice of it, it's a new language, it's together with a new language, what this language carries behind. So I feel that it's a new performance of the poem, and that's why. And we test that every time we're reading together, as we did together. Yes.
Thank you for those reflections. It's very interesting to think about how poets and translators work together on the final version. Part of putting together this issue was realizing just how rich and varied the contemporary Greek poetry scene is. I should say Greece and Cyprus because that was the focus in the end. So I wanted to ask the poets, where do you see your work as fitting into the contemporary scene of writing in Greece, and how the themes of your work enter into that rich, sort of varied landscape? I know it's a difficult question.
Okay, I mean, I don't know, Phoebe, do you want me to
If you like, yes, of course.
comment or?
No.
So I mean, as Phoebe knows, and I mean, it is evident if you just go through the volume that you have prepared. Modern Greek poetic scene is really diverse. So we have many voices coming from many different directions. It is very pluralistic, and I think that very many different topics, I mean, actually become the theme of various poems, poems of various forms. I mean, you have heard, I mean, my poetry is quite different as regards the form and the rhythm. compared to Phoebe's. So it is a very interesting, I believe, mosaic of voices here that sort of really enlivens modern Greek language, I have to say. Well, as regards my poetry, certainly, it does belong to this, let's say, very active contemporary Greek poetic scene. However, I am in constant dialogue also with our past, the poets who, of course, the major Greek poets of the Greek language, but of course, I am also interacting with my contemporary friends, let's say, in this very difficult, I have to say, work, the poem. But I think it is for the critics to say how far, my poetry fits or not, or I don't know. And of course, it will take time. Time will tell, because the whole landscape is really dense right now, densely populated. So I believe that time will actually help all these voices find the right place in what we call the poetic tradition of the Greek language. This is my feeling, at least.
Yes, I agree with Dimitra. I think the current poetic scene in Greece is very, very rich, and you can see it in your issue now, the issue for which we are here today. It's very rich, and it has younger generations that entered to write and to be also very active in the public scene. So there are also magazines that exist, a lot of them. There is poetry in several parts of Greece and not only in Athens. There are various contemporary, let's say, ways to make the poetry public, to share the poetry in between people. So the older generations, I think they are left behind a lot now. So in this scene, I feel that I belong to several groups of friends. Even if our poetry is not the same, we are making a magazine, the Pharmacon magazine. Dimitra has also published there, which makes us think and rethink about poetry and be together, because I don't know whether we want to make like a current, or to have our own paths, but that are at the same time going together and are in a dialogue with the paths of the others. So my poetry, I think, is in a way, it's has a very strong transmediality, which is not so present in Greece. I think it has this contemporary direction that comes from my scientific background. My studies in architecture and philology, and me being an architect at the same time. So I am gliding through the media, and each media gives a different form on my poetry. And then I cannot speak in another way. I love very much ancient Greek poetry. I love epic poetry. I love to read lyric poetry and translate that. And then contemporary voices that can enrich my own poetry, even if in another language. I think we can never understand the poem the way we understand it in our own language. So yes, I love very much Alice Oswald or Anne Carson, but this is not the only thing. I mean, I'm circulating through centuries and through places as I'm circulating through media, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about these cross currents, right? On the one hand, between different art forms, as Phoebe mentioned, between maybe video and visual arts and architecture and poetry. The beautiful cover image of the magazine, I should mention again, was done by Phoebe, the goat skin. And yeah, on the other hand, the relationship between the old and the new, right? Between the older traditions of poetry and the newer traditions, and also between different parts of the world. I think maybe thinking in terms of the nation is a bit limited in terms of poetic writing. I think both Phoebe and Dimitra mentioned their relationship with US poets, but also poets from other countries, and the way that has come into their work as well. That leads to the question from the audience member. Which poets do you love to read from the Greek language from current and older times? Are there some poets you would love to see have more exposure in English that show the value of Greek poetry and literature and its current diversity and richness? I guess this is a question about your influences.
Oh yeah, in our language, you mean? Yeah. Yeah, me recently and for a long time, I read with great passion Melpo Axioti, who is a modernist poet, Greek poet. I think she's, if she would write in another language at her time, she would be one of the best in the world. Then I love very much Matsi Hadjilazaru. They're from the same period, both of them. I love the poetry of Yannis Ritsos, not everything, but I found very inspiring things inside. Previously, I was reading a lot Kavafis, then previously a lot when I was younger, Seferis or Elitis, but not anymore so much. So yes, now that's the first that comes in my mind.
Yeah. Dimitra, what are your Greek influences and recommendations?
Oh, yes. Well, I have to say that I am quite, let's say, fascinated by, I don't know if this is evident in my work, but by the folk song Greek tradition. I mean, this, let's say, this, they are not poems, I mean, written as poems, but the way that the folk songs have been composed and are still performed in Greece through also the dance. This really fascinates me, maybe because my parents, my mother and father, they used to, I mean, recite parts of these, all these folk songs and these folk tales. And and there was another thing, while I was growing, I mean, in my home, verses were sort of repeated, and in many cases not correctly. However, poetry was in the atmosphere, I have to say. Although my parents are not intellectuals, of course, but somehow they brought the rhythm of the language in my everyday life, which was quite fascinating, I have to say. I don't know if this rhythm sort of has been somehow transmitted into my work. I don't know. In any case, for me, my big love is Yorgos Seferis, the first Greek Nobel. I mean, and mainly his earlier work, I have again to admit. But also I really like Niki Marangou, a poet that she also lived in Cyprus. She's, there. I was, unfortunately, she died very young. I believe she had much more to give. I believe she's a fascinating poet. And then I also like let's say, maybe they're not very trendy, but I do like, for example, Kostis Palamas, these old, very, maybe difficult to be read today, but I like the rhythm. And so that gives me a sort of an internal rhythm that sort of, it is quite reinvigorating, I have to say, for my everyday life and the courage that anyone needs. I mean, I believe that poetry is not just to be read, but I mean, when you sit down and relax and you take a poetry book because you like it or whatever, but it is somehow present in our everyday life, but we don't very much realize it. In that sense, verses keep crossing my mind at various moments from various people. For example, Kiki Dimitra, for example, a modern poet, or maybe some of my fellow poets, contemporary, those that Phoebe mentioned as a group, or maybe older poets of the earlier generations, or even, as I told you, folk songs. So I think that I have a very, let's say, corporeal relation with the language, poetic language. I don't know how to say it, but I can feel the presence of rhythmical, the rhythm of the Greek language, and in poetry, this is best reflected. Although you can find it in various other, of course, areas. I don't know if I have answered the question, but.
Yeah, I think that musicality in the folk songs and all the rhythms that you're mentioning are very much present in the reading that you did and also in the translations from Maria.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's very much something we can appreciate as readers and listeners also. There's another question in the chat for the translators, which is, how did your collaborations with the poets begin? And what did you love most about the experience on a human level and a professional translation level?
Yep, I'd be happy to kick this one off. So it really was sort of a game of geographical telephone, and it was really cool to see how it manifested. So I started out studying with the wonderful Ted Kuzer. I would later become his assistant, but we developed a pretty unlikely bond, I would say, as poets and as people. And I liked him so much, I went back the next semester and I said, Ted, I'd like to do an independent study with you. And I assumed that we would be focusing on my own poetry. And he said, wait a minute. He's like, Maria, you do know that you have to fulfill a foreign language requirement. And I'm like, well, I mean, I lived in Greece. Like, do I really need to? And he said, listen, as an active literary service, I can't stress this enough. I really think if you are proficient enough in Greek, that you should translate a younger, still alive Greek female poet. And my initial reaction was, I was like, translation, isn't that like for scholars and like smart people? Unbeknownst to me, that like as somebody getting my doctorate, that was absolutely the case. And so Ted then put out his feelers to many different people, including Alicia Stallings, for whom I will be eternally grateful. And Alicia was the one who said, she didn't name even a second name. She didn't even hesitate. She said Dimitra Kotoula. And that was 13 years ago. So it's pretty cool to see how it is that it happened. And yeah, what became a 1 semester long independent study just blossomed into a book.
I mean, again, similar to Maria, it was through a mentor that I found my way to Phoebe's work. So I was very lucky when I was a PhD student at the University of Connecticut that I arrived the same year as Peter Constantine, who was also in the issue, this time as a poet. You know, historically, his career, primarily translator of from 9 different languages, many different classics and contemporary poets. But so I encountered him. He was very surprised that I was into Seferis. And he was like, well, there's a living poet that I think you should meet. And so we went to Colombia one day and met Phoebe. And I had translated 2 poems before the meeting, and I was very nervous. But she made coffee, and we sat down, and she was very hospitable, as she always is, and looked at the poems, and she said, I think you should translate this book. So that was kind of the start of our interaction. So I do have Peter to thank for that. In terms of what did I love most, I think genuinely it is the friendship that I have with Phoebe. It is the time that we spend together, which arguably is also part of the source text, which gets involved when you're translating a poet's voice. You're also translating them. You're translating their poetics, and I feel like getting to spend time with Phoebe has been the greatest kind of reward from this experience. Professionally, I think probably it's this book, which just came out from Fitzcarraldo. It's Goatsong. And it's the 3 books that we published originally in the US with World Poetry Books and New Directions all together. So the poetry editor, Rachel Allen, had the idea, taking those 3 books and putting them together in a single collection. And having them together in a single collection has allowed me to kind of look back on, because usually as a translator, you have a very granular, very close reading of a text. And so it allowed me to have a distance to see not only the trajectory of Phoebe's work over that period of time, but also of my development as a translator, my development as a writer, which leads me to the next question. Ava, thank you for the great questions, by the way, Ava. What did you learn from the process? Something that I learned directly was how to write prose poems. Initially, I was very kind of intimidated by them back when I was poetry editor of the literary journal Meridian, when I was doing my MFA at the University of Virginia. If a prose poem came across the desk, I would give it to another editor. I don't know why. I needed the line break in order to hear the music of a poem. And it was in translating some of the prose poems from Phoebe's Rhapsodia that I was able to suddenly find myself writing them. And so this idea that, thinking of Lawrence Venuti when he says, the job of translation is to make the receiving culture mindful of what it lacks. And I think the same is true of a translator, especially if the translator is a poet as well, because it shows you what your writing lacks. And when you try on these new forms in another's voice, you take something of your own with you. And so being able to write in prose poems was something that Phoebe directly gifted me from the translation process.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Maria. Does anybody else have a question? We've got 5 minutes. If not, I'll ask a final question, which is about the future directions of your work. I know that usually we look backward when we do these kinds of events talking about previous publications, but I'd like to know what you're working on now and your future poetic investigations. Yes, thank you. Maybe Dimitra first.
I mean, yeah, maybe also our translators should answer to this question.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, because I mean, as Brian said, I believe that Maria is already, of course, a poet in her own, the American English, but they sort of become poets also in Greek, in the Greek language. So I am active. I have to say that I'm about to publish a new collection, and I'm currently trying to bring together the poems of a new one. It is going to be about the Iliad, Homer. and maybe I will. I mean, I have thought of the title. It is an Astyanact smile, the smile of Astyanact. I don't know how you pronounce Astyanact in English. So. So I do have in my head the book. It is saved there, so I have to find the right moment, the momentum to sort of bring it on the paper. So that's my. I have to say that I am really glad, and I mean, this issue of modern poetry actually really it is really important because it sort of reflects how relevant modern Greek poetry is. So it was really an honor to be part of this really, really hard, I believe, endeavor, but you did a great job. So I have to say that I'm grateful for this too.
Yes, I am also at the point of completing a new book, which is called in Greek Pelagos. Pelagos is a word for the sea, but the sea in Greek has several words to design it. So Pelagos is one of them, and it's a modular poem with very small parts that are going on like waves, like variations. And this is the book I am ready to publish now. I'm working also on two others. The one has to do with trees and plants, but I'm not sure. So it has also animals inside, and finally it will have everything, I am afraid. And the other is more theoretical. So I try to work, together, or the one after the other, in a way. So, yeah.
And the translators who are also poets can also respond.
Sure thing. So I'm really, really delighted for the first time in 16 years, so about a little over the number of years that I've worked with and known Dimitra. My second collection of poems, thank goodness, is due out from Omnidon. I'm super excited. It's going to be officially out in the spring of 2026, but it's available for pre-order now. You can get it Pulse through the University of Chicago, which is Omnidon's distributor. And I also put the link in my bio because, as you can see, I am super, super excited about it. I couldn't be any more so. So I'll turn it over to Brian. I know he's doing something awesome.
And I feel like I'm just repeating you, Marie. I'm so sorry. So I have a second collection as well coming out. Nice. It's not ready for pre-order though, so well done, Omnidon. But similar hiatus or length between first and second collection, something to do with the pandemic and translation work and having two children. But that book, Year of the Labyrinth, is coming out with Carnegie Mellon University Press next year. And after that, I'm looking forward to translating with Phoebe this next collection. It's been one that I've been looking forward to having it on the desk for a very long time. I think Phoebe's still in the editing stages, I think. So I'm really looking forward to having that in hand. And also exploring some nonfiction as well, writing in some prose, just about fatherhood and being a poet, living in southern Scotland, the kind of ballad traditions that we have here and the music traditions that are still very alive and well. So that's a new genre for me. But yes, looking forward to more translation.
Wonderful. Lots of things to add to the reading list. Yeah, so thank you to all of you for this amazing conversation. We could have kept talking for hours, I think, but we have to wrap it up now. Thank you to everybody for listening also. And the issue is available to order. This is a really exciting issue also because it marks our 60-year anniversary at Modern Poetry and Translation. So it's a highlight, and there have been 2 Greek issues previously. So this is sort of an update of the tradition in the present. Yeah, Brian's got the old one. Yeah. So everybody, thank you, and
Thank
happy reading.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you,
very
Jessica.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jessica.
so very much. Okay. Bye.